Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of The Daily Prompt. This episode comes from some pages that were submitted to me recently that I asked for, that I requested as to sort of get a sense of the writer's skill level. So often I talk about how you can never find viable material and how particularly intermediate level writers spend so much time spinning in circles. They just don't know what they don't know, and they think they're creating at sort of that higher level, but it turns out they're kind of not. And so I wanted to sort of give this one writer a little bit of feedback. Now, as I record this video, I have not yet given him specific feedback, but it struck me that I wanted to make a quick little video out of it. Not specifically about this writer or about his work in particular, but one of the things that I noticed about his work was that the pages are not very full. There's a video, actually I'll put a link to it here, that shows what this wall here looks like. I'm not going to take down the camera at the moment just because I've got too much to do today. Basically, there's a giant frame here on the wall with a little monitor in the middle. So when I play video back and I'm watching sort of an edit, I'm imagining how it looks on an even bigger screen. And up in the corner there, it says fill the frame. And the idea comes from cinematography, where when a cinematographer frames a shot, they really think about filling the frame. They really think about making sure that the things that are in the frame tell more of the story and help expand some of the picture of what's happening, rather than just pointing a camera at something to capture that thing. So for example, this shot right here, it could just be me talking in front of a blank wall, but by having sort of monitors behind me, you can see that I'm in my sort of editing room office setup here. It just fills the frame a little bit more. It gives a bit more of a picture. I would have liked to have had things on that screen all the time, but I don't have the time to put together different images for every episode. Showing video of here, whatever. This is just a screensaver in the back over here. So the idea of fill the frame as an idea that cinematographers say is really to paint the most vivid picture that you can. Now, I like to convey this advice to writers and to basically say every single page, every single paragraph on that page, every line of dialogue, every moment, every beat of your screenplay really needs to fill the frame. The challenge that I have with a lot of writing, and particularly newer writers or intermediate writers or maybe writers who haven't fully tapped into that tactile, visceral nature of screenwriting and storytelling, what will often happen is you'll have a character entering a scene, and that's not the case of this example I'm talking about, so that writer needn't worry. But what happens in half of the screenplays that I read is a couple characters will enter a scene and then start talking, go back and forth, and it's kind of like a volley, but it's more like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, pretty good. What's going on with you? And a little another piece of information, another piece of information, another piece of information, and there's not really a sense of life happening. There's not really a sense of scene happening. There's not a fullness to the story or the screenplay. So what will happen for the reader is the script can feel really flat, or it can feel really basic, or intermediate is a word I keep coming back to. So when I pick up a script, and this is true for pretty much any producer or anyone on the receiving end of script submissions, I can pick up a script, I can look at that first page, and I can pretty much know from page one how sort of what level the writer is at. I can get a sense pretty much from page one of how well the writer understands the craft of writing. The big, I guess, challenge or mistake that newer writers get into is they see the formatting of the page, they see how sparsely the words are written, they see they can go out and get some, in many cases, free script writing software, and they turn their idea into a script formatted idea. But that does not take into consideration the complexity and the layered fullness of screenwriting. So for example, just as a simple example, if you have two characters in a back and forth dialogue scene, and we don't know who those characters are, and we launch into that scene, and all you do is say, Bob and Sue are sitting at a table, and then we go into the dialogue. Now, it's possible that you could do that effectively, but if I don't know who Bob and, what did I just say? Bob and Susan. If I don't know who these characters are, and they just start talking, I'm imagining shadow figures. There's no picture in my head of who these people are. There's no sense of where we are. There's no sense that this is a real thing. Now, you might think, well, in a play, you know, that all gets created by the people on the stage and all that. But, and that's true in film as well, except that we do need to have a picture of what we're watching. We do need to have a sense of who these people are. What you can do, first of all, if you're introducing new characters to a scene that we don't know, we need to have some way to picture them. So it doesn't have to be introduce the character, their age, some physical description of them, and then go into the scene, because that can get very boring and it's unimaginative. It's kind of like giving a list of these cast members are in this scene now today. That's not a really interesting read. That's not going to engage us and pull us into this story. We're not gonna let go of the fact that we've got phones ringing and emails to answer and get lost in this story if it's clinical like that. But what you can do is create little visual images. You know, a short, stocky man, you know, slams his fist on the table, and then we go straight into the dialogue. Suddenly we have a bit of a picture. Are they at a cafe? Are they at home? Are they at a restaurant? Are they, if we don't see a sense of the place, we're not really in that movie yet. Now, you can, this is the challenge with screenwriting, is you can get away with that kind of sparseness. But within the dialogue then at that point, you need to continually be revealing this picture. So you need to be so with each line of dialogue, we need to have a better and better sense of maybe the tension between the characters, maybe the conflicting points of view, or the conflicting goals of the characters, or how the different characters are or interact with, or how they feel about or interact with the environment that they're in. By adding these kinds of layers, this kind of fullness, we begin to fill the frame. Now, from a writing standpoint, and the reason I put this on my wall is from a writing standpoint, filling the frame is really about making sure that the picture that you're creating on the page has enough in it that we feel like we're drawn into a story. It's very easy to read 3, 4, 5, 10 pages of a script and feel like it's just sort of this back and forth volley, and 4 or 5 pages into it, what is this? Who are these people? Why do I care? What's going on here? And the way around that is to build this fullness into your story. If you watch some of the great television that's happening today, I'm happy to be at the point of recording this video watching this show called Succession on HBO. And one of the great things about this show, one of the most powerful things about this, is these deep layers of context and meaning and interpersonal character dynamics and strategizing. As a character is saying something within a scene, it can be a very simple line of dialogue with a, you know, eye flick or something like that. And you realize that this has to do with some other aspect of these characters' relationship that's completely detached from whatever this scene is right here. It's that kind of complexity that we need to be able to glean and extract from the pages themselves. Now, the benefit you have of it in a movie is you're seeing pictures, you're seeing actors, you're seeing the little flick of the eye, which you don't have in the script. We don't want to be describing the character turns away, she looks back, she winks, she nods. Generally speaking, we don't want all that kind of character blocking, but we need to convey that meaning. We need to make sure that those complexities and those nuances are coming across to the reader so that we understand that there are layers in the scene. We understand that there are dynamics at work here. And that's the part that can be really challenging for writers. So how do we get there? How do you do that? How do you infuse that into it? Well, there's a whole process to doing that, and it's far more elaborate than I can go into in this video. But just to give you a couple little pointers, first of all, you need to have a clear sense of where we are and make sure that the characters are actually living and interacting with and behaving within the context of that space. People behave differently. Scenes play out differently in different locations. So we need to make sure that we're really there and we have a sense of that. Now, you're not going to describe everything that happens. You're not going to paint this full picture of where we are, but you need to do that within a couple of lines, a couple of words to paint that picture, or within the way the characters interact. If they're at a diner, is the character super rude or dismissive of a waiter that comes by? If that's the case, that can be a way to interact with that scene that brings the reality of the space alive. Or, all of a sudden there's a burst from out of nowhere where he shouts at a little kid making noise across the room, and the whole place goes silent. That would completely change the dynamic of a very simple two-person scene. Now, these kinds of examples I'm always resistant to give because I don't want 10 films to now have that idea in it. The point is, what's right for your characters? How are they interacting with that world? Additionally, when characters are talking with each other, what's the underlying issue and dynamic, and how can you reveal some of that? How can you hint at some of those tensions within the scene? How can you take what's happening in a moment and expand it so that we see more than just what we're seeing on the screen? There's a complex notion called subtext, where what I say to you is not necessarily what I mean to you. I could compliment you and say, that is a beautiful hat you're wearing today, when it's very obvious that I think that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life, right? So how do you convey that within the context of a scene? You're not just going to do it with the dialogue. You're not going to do it with little Riley brackets that go sarcastic. You want to make sure that it's interacting with the scene, that it's playing out in that way. So I guess my point is this. And again, this is the challenge I have on this YouTube channel. It's impossible for me to teach the complexity and nuance of all this stuff in a YouTube video. That's why I built a whole system. But I want to give you some of these ideas. So today, as you're thinking through your writing or the things that you've created, I want you to look back on it. You want to make sure that not a single page goes by without a full sense of where we are and the complexity of what's happening. If I read 3, 4, 5 pages and I still can't quite figure out what's happening in a scene, or we're not really getting anywhere within a scene, chances are there is not enough complexity to it. There's not enough layers. It's not a full enough frame. So what I want you to do today as a prompt is take a look at anything that you've written in the past. Go back and pull out some old scripts. This is one of the reasons so many writers hate what they wrote 10 years ago, because you look back on it and you go, this is the most shallow, undynamic piece of writing I've ever seen, because you just don't necessarily have those layers and that complexity within it. So have a look at what you've written. Have a look at what you're writing now. Is the scene that you're working on today, or the idea that you're assuming you're not with me in the system, the scene that you're plucking out of your head and jotting down on paper today, is it full? Are we seeing if it's 1 page long, it's 1 minute of screen time on average. Is this a rich, complex, multi-layered minute? If not, how can you make it such? How can you add subtext? How can you add characters interacting with their world? How can you change the dynamics of what's happening in the scene, or what characters are wanting or trading with each other to fill that frame, to add that complexity, to create a new layer for your work? If you do apply this basic principle across the board, you're going to see your writing quality raise quite substantially. Again, the way we do it in my system is we go step by step through it. So as you're simply doing the exercises, we're naturally building that complexity into it, so that when you start shaping it and giving it the the detail when you're writing that draft, when you're going through the rewrite process. All of this stuff is factored in automatically, so you really just get to that natural complexity. If anything, you run into the challenge of having too much complexity, which overwhelms the reader, which we'll save for another day. But ultimately, that's today's daily prompt. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, pop it in the questions below. Make sure to subscribe and click the little bell icon. Make sure to sign up for all of our social media accounts, even though we're doing absolutely nothing with them at the time of this writing. Hopefully, by the time something else happens soon, we will be doing plenty with them. Make sure you sign up for the 7 Steps to Writing and Selling Your Screenplay webinar. Make sure that you understand the complete process, because if you miss a single step along the way, you basically make results impossible for yourself. So I want to make sure to give you as much as I possibly can. Ask questions here, follow through, take action today. We will see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.